Welcome back. We're talking with Minister Jason Kenney, Canada's Immigration Minister. Jason, you have talked about a private member's bill put forward by Devinder Shorey, who himself is an immigrant to Canada from Calgary. And in his bill, he would propose to give your department the power to strip a dual citizen convicted of terrorism or involved with terrorism of their Canadian citizenship. Now, this sounds like such a no-brainer and so uncontroversial to me. Why has this private member's bill been opposed by the Globe and Mail, by other MPs? Who possibly could be for letting dual citizen terrorists keep their Canadian citizenship?
It's a very good question, because all Devinder is proposing is that, in a sense, we restore our law back to where it was in 1977 when the Trudeau government watered down our Citizenship Act. Before that, we could revoke citizenship from people who committed acts of treason against Canada. Now, think back to 1947 when that law was written. We didn't really I don't think terrorism even existed as a word. So I think implicit in the idea of treason were acts of terrorism. And in any event, virtually every other Western liberal democracy has a power to revoke citizenship from people who have committed acts of war against that country, acts of treason or terrorism, or in some cases the powers for revocation is much broader. In the United Kingdom and Australia, countries that are just as much rights-respecting democracies as Canada, they can revoke citizenship when it's deemed to be in the public interest. In the United States, they can do so when it's deemed to be for national security reasons. Now, we're talking about a much more circumscribed power, basically to say that a dual citizen, or excuse me, citizenship is predicated on a reciprocal loyalty. And if you go out and express your disloyalty to the country violently, launching a war against it, or committing violent acts for organizations that are terrorist enemies of Canada, that should be considered a voluntary renunciation of your citizenship. In other words, we shouldn't be so legalistic as to require that you fill out a form announcing your citizenship and sign it. Maybe when you go out and blow up a busload of children and you're a citizen of another country, we should take a hint and regard that as a renunciation of your loyalty and the citizenship.
Do you think this bill will see a debate and a vote in Parliament? I mean, it's a private member's bill. Those often don't come to fruition.
Yes, it's already received 1 hour of debate last month, and it's coming up for a second hour next week. And I anticipate the second hour already happened last Friday, and it's now passed a committee. There was no opposition.
Oh, really?
No opposition at second reading.
Oh, really? Well, I'm pleased to hear that. Sounds like the opposition has come around. You know what I like about the bill? First of all, it's written by Devinder Shorey. He's an immigrant himself, which is sort of, I call it a love letter to Canada. He's saying, you know what, my citizenship here, I actually value it. There's also a second part to it. He says if someone comes to Canada and signs up for our Canadian forces, they can get 1 year shaved off of the period of time they have to wait to become a citizen. I think that's great. I mean, that shows that if you want to serve Canada, we'll value your service. I love that bill.
Devinder believes so passionately in this country that's given him such great opportunities, having come here 2 decades ago as an immigrant from India. He wants to encourage patriotism and service amongst new Canadians, and at the same time he wants to be clear that if you attack this country or you violently express your disloyalty to it, there will be a consequence for that. And Devinder himself was touched, I think indirectly, by terrorism in India. He, like most new Canadians, are completely intolerant of violent extremism, and they look at some of these elite white liberals with curiosity when they say that we should allow violent terrorists who are dual citizens to retain their citizenship in perpetuity. The folks I know in new Canadian communities simply don't understand that.
It's funny you say that. Let me shift gears a bit. I did a BBC World Radio talk show. They literally took calls from 20 different countries around the world. It was about Omar Khadr. Every single caller from Africa, from Arabia, said, oh, Omar Khadr, he is a terrorist. The only person who said, well, you know, maybe he's not, was a 20-something teacher from Vancouver. Of course, this guilty white liberal vegetarian thought that Omar Khadr, you know, I mean, it just tells me that immigrant communities are more thoughtful, more conservative, more law-abiding.
Well, I generally find that new Canadians are unburdened by political correctness.
That's what it is. And you know what? In India and in Pakistan, these places are racked with terrorism. Last question.
They don't have the luxury of being soft on terror.
Well, that's what it is. You know, we're so rich and luxurious that we think we can afford to be stupid, but in the age of terror, we can't. Last question. This bill only applies to dual citizens, someone who is a citizen of another country. What do you think about stripping, denaturalizing someone
Yeah.
who is only a Canadian but came here, like we did with Nazis or tried
I
to
think
do with
a
Nazis,
strong argument, well, that's
based on lying to get here?
yeah,
but
that's if they obtain their citizenship fraudulently. The problem we have is that we signed a convention on the prevention of statelessness, and if we take away citizenship for someone who does not have citizenship or residency in another country, we find ourselves in a whole bunch of legal problems. But I think that maybe that's an issue for another day.
Well, I look forward to talking about it another day, because I think this bill is such a baby step. It should pass resoundingly, but it should make us consider further steps.
We've
too.
seen polling, scientific polling, 85% support. So the Globe and Mail editorial board is in the other, I think, 8% that are opposed.
Yeah, I'm not sure a lot of new Canadians read the Globe and Mail, but they use it to wrap fish. Hey folks, I'm Ezra Levant. We're talking with Jason Kenny. More after the break.